Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do with this project is we are going to stain the wood piece for the base that we're later going to paint and attach the bow and greenery to. So, some of you are probably already familiar with staining, but just in case you're not, we're going to do a quick tutorial. This is Ebony by Minwax, and there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, you should use oil-based stain because the color stays richer longer, and that is true, but I love water-based stain because it shows a lot more of the wood grain, and I feel like oil-based stain is just thicker and it tends to get tackier, and so to me it doesn't show as much of the wood grain, and that's just my favorite part. I love to see all the lines and the knots. I just love that part. So what you're gonna do, some people also use like a tack cloth, but I just use paper towels. That's just the way I've always done it for years now, and it's worked just fine for me. So you dip a little bit in your stain can after you shake the can, and then rub it against, or brush it on with the grain. Don't go against the grain. It's really windy out here today. I hope y'all can hear me fine. But you just brush it on right with the grain. You have your wood, or you have your stain all over your wood, and see, if you look close at it, you can still see all that really pretty wood grain. That's my favorite part. I love that. So after that, you're going to want to let this sit for like, the can I think says like 5 to 10 minutes, but I always just let it sit for like 3 to 4 minutes, and then it gives a good, it penetrates really well and gives a good look to it. So after that, then you just want to dry off all the excess. It doesn't have to be really dry. You just want to make sure to take off all the where it looks really wet so that it doesn't get tacky. So now that the staining is done, sorry, it's like so bright out here. So now that the staining is done, we're going to distress the edges before we paint the lettering and attach the bow and the greenery. So I have a orbital power sander with 220 grit sandpaper, and I have my wood that's stained. This, by the way, is a 18-inch circle from Lowe's. It's about $12, so you can find it there. And all you do is take your sander, and I'm just gonna turn it on, and then I'm gonna run it all along the edges until it looks distressed how I like. You can do it as much or as little as you want, or you don't have to do it at all, but I love to distress as much as I can. So I'm just gonna run it along the edges. Okay, so be careful when you do this not to lay your sander flat. Oop, just did it. All right, not to lay your sander flat so that you don't sand where your design is. You just want to hold it up against the edge and just run it along the edge. So that's all I'm gonna do as far as distressing. It's just a little bit more rustic, and then I'm gonna take a wet paper towel and just run it over this to kind of get all the extra sawdust off of it, and then we're going to show you how to paint it. Alright, so the next step is to do the lettering, and I am going to be using the reverse vinyl method for this piece. Some of you may be familiar with that already, but if you're not, I'm going to show you how to do it step by step, and it's way easier than it looks. So the first step is to cut out the stencil with a Cameo or a Cricut. So if you don't have one, there's a lot of people that have these now, so there may be someone in the area that has one of these that can cut the stencil for you. If not, you might could order it online, or you could order it from my Etsy shop. But you take your stencil, and if you've already cut it out, you just go through and weed it. This is called weeding. And I have this little Cricut hook But for something like this, you could just use a toothpick. This thing is like $13 to buy this hook. So if you didn't want to buy that, you could just use a toothpick for something like this. Most of what I weed for vinyl is very, very small pieces, so this little hook is a lifesaver for those. But for something this big, you don't have to use it that much. So I've got my Hello stencil. Okay, so that's weeded. You can just trash this. All right, and then I've got my piece of wood. Let me move this over so you can see it a little bit more. So we have our piece of wood that we stained. And what you do with the reverse vinyl, you take, this is just contact paper. You can get it at Walmart, Dollar General, Staples, anywhere. They do make Cricut transfer paper, but it's way more expensive and it's actually kind of annoying. So I don't like it because it's too sticky. So you separate the vinyl, or you separate the adhesive from the backing. If you can see that, pull it apart. Keep it really flat and try to make sure you don't have any crinkles in it when you put it down on your vinyl. Okay, lay it down smooth. All right, and then you separate your vinyl from the back. I usually just lay it down flat. Peel off. You want to keep all these pieces, so just kind of push them down as you go. Pull that off. Okay, so now you have your sticky part here. You're gonna flip it around and set your sticky part on your wood. Now, usually I would move this around and I would take a tape measure and I would try to measure it to make sure it's exactly centered and straight. But I want this off-centered, and I don't necessarily care a whole lot if it's straight because the font itself, oh, this font, by the way, is called Bushel and a Peck, and I love it so much. So if you have somebody cut the stencil for you, you can tell them to use that font if you like this one. Okay, so I'm just kind of eyeballing it because, again, if it is a little off-center, I'll just move my whole piece before I put my bow and my. So it's really not that big of a deal if it's not centered. So then once you got it where you want it, push it down, lay it down flat. Okay. And then I usually just take, they make little like thick plastic, Cricut makes little thick plastic, almost like cards that you can use. But I just use the back of stickers and I just push it down really, really, really good because you're gonna peel off this contact paper and you don't want the vinyl to come with it. So push it down really, really, really good. Okay, then peel this back. You don't want to peel up because the vinyl will come with it. If you just peel flat back, that will all come off. Okay. All right, make sure that you don't have any bubbles. You don't want your paint seeping through underneath your vinyl. Okay. Then you're going to take Mod Podge. It doesn't really matter what sheen you use. I always just go with matte. It's a big old tub of it. It's really cheap. And I use foam brushes. And I just stick them in a baggie so that I don't have to rinse them out every single time. But I'll usually throw them away and reuse them after, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. So you brush your Mod Podge over where you put your stencil. And what this does is this dries clear. So anything that's gonna seep underneath your vinyl, it's gonna be this first instead of your paint, and it's gonna dry clear. So I always use this anytime I do reverse vinyl, reverse painting, just because it gives you really nice clean lines when you go to take off this vinyl. Okay, so you need to let that sit about 10 minutes. So we are gonna put our first coat of paint on our sign. I just used Folk Art chalk paint. There's a lot of different brands that you can use, but it's just the one that I like the best. You can find it at Hobby Lobby. I ordered this from Amazon. And just dip your foam brush in your bottle. Let me move this up so you can see a little bit closer. Okay, so you can see that I'm going over all where the stencil was, or is. And you just want to make sure that you're covering all the parts that have the exposed wood. You don't want big clumps of paint, but you want to make sure you just get an even coat all around. And this is awesome because, you know, you don't have to sit there and make sure that it's perfectly neat or anything like that. You just slap it on there and you take the stencil off. So this takes about 5 minutes to dry, 5 to 10 minutes. I'll keep an eye on it. So we're gonna set that over here, and then while that's drying, I'm going to show you how to make the bow that's going to go on top. Okay, so I have 2.5 inch ribbon, buffalo check, my favorite, from Hobby Lobby, 50% off this week. And you want to make sure that you get the wire ribbon. It doesn't matter necessarily obviously what color, you can do whatever color you want, but you want to make sure that you have the wire ribbon. And you can do the 1.5 inch ribbon if you like. It just makes it a different look, but I love the look of the bows with the 2 inch wire ribbon. It's just beautiful to me. I just love it. Okay, so it's actually been quite a while since I've made bows because I usually make them mostly at Christmas time. Okay, so I'm gonna try to explain this as clearly as I can. So you want to leave about that much off for a tail, and then hold the rest in your hand up here, starting with 1 loop. Okay, you can make the loops kind of small if you want like a smaller bow. I'm kind of wanting like a big puffy bow, so you're gonna pinch that, let this go. Then the great thing about this ribbon specifically is it's the same pattern on both sides, but if it wasn't, you would just twist it as you loop it. But I don't have to worry about that because it's the same pattern on both sides. So some people will have like a ruler and they'll measure each loop. I don't do that. I just like eyeball it because I'm not really that picky with it. But if you're like really OCD, you can just set a ruler out here and you can say like, okay, you know, 10 inches, make my loop. That way they're all the same, but it doesn't really matter to me. So I just eyeball it. So you're just gonna keep, I hope y'all can see this, okay. So you're just gonna keep making loops and bringing them together in the center. So I have 4 now. I'm gonna do 1 on one side and then move to the other side. Okay. Now I have 3. On each side. I'm gonna try to get as much as I can because I really want a big old puffy bow. Okay. Probably do 1 more loop on each side and then I'll show you how to close it up. And sometimes if you get it done and you realize like, oh man, I got 1 tiny little loop or whatever, sometimes I do have to restart if that happens. So, okay, so then you want to cut off, leave about the same amount of access for the other tail. Okay, so then it should look like this. You should have all of your loops crisscrossed and you should be holding them all in your hand like this. So what I do is I'll just pinch them all together, make sure they're really tight, and then you can take, you probably can't even see this, but this floral wire or pipe cleaners are also really a lot easier to work with. I just didn't have any, I only had floral wire, and I hope you guys can still see it. But you're just gonna wrap it around where your fingers are holding. and then twist as tight as you can. And as many times, well, I won't say as many times as you can, but twist it a good number of times to get a really, really tight knot right there. So it's really secure, because you don't want this to be coming out, because it will drive you crazy. Okay, so that should be good and secure. So it's really, that part is pretty easy. It's just looping it. The hardest part really is just making sure that you get the same size loops. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of move these around. I want to have one kind of in the center. So I'm kind of going to puff it out in the center. I'm going to just puff all of these out to where they don't look so uniform. They look a little bit more random. Just kind of move them all around. I hope that this is making sense, because I have tried to teach bows before and I'm like, it's so easy, you'll love it, and people just are like, what? So I hope that that made sense. I just move this around until I like how it looks. So then it should kind of look like that, really puffy looking. And I have, my front door is right in the sun all day long, and we don't really have a porch. We just kind of have like a little awning. Oh, so then the very ends of the tails, you can do, if you like, here, I'll do it with this one. If you like for it to be angled, fold it together like that, and then cut from an angle like this. I don't have like very good scissors, but okay. And then it'll look like that, but I don't want it like that. I just want one flat angle, because that's what I like. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna cut down at an angle, and I'm gonna do the same thing with the other side. And then once our sign is painted and sealed, I'll show you how to seal it too. Once it's painted and sealed, I'll show you how to attach this. But that's pretty much what the bow should look like when it's done, just a big puff of loops. And if you're like me, you'll be forever fluffing it for the rest of the time that you have it. And actually, this first coat is dry. That's how fast chalk paint dries. Chalk paint is awesome because it's best because it's so thick that it doesn't really run under the vinyl, and then it dries so fast. So especially if you're like me and you make like tons and tons and tons of these signs, the faster that it dries, the better. And it just makes your project go really fast, because that was only, I don't know, that was maybe 5 minutes that was sitting there, and it's already dry. So we're gonna put the second coat on there. Okay, and then I actually just take the vinyl off right away after this, but some people say to wait until it's dry. I don't think it really matters. It seems like sometimes if I wait until it's dry, some of the paint will peel up with the vinyl, so I just do it while it's wet, but I don't do all the insides of the circles. Okay, so this is really, really important and will save you a lot of frustration if you start to make these signs. So when you're peeling off your vinyl, my wood grain is going this way. So I don't want to peel my vinyl this way because it will peel off all the wood. I want to peel it as best I can. I want to try to go against the grain to peel it off. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So actually turning out really, really good. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so set that aside to throw that away. All right, so you still have all of these little circles. I said I was gonna wait, but I think it'll actually be, since they're so big, we can actually just go ahead, and what I do is I stick my hook right in the middle of the circle and just peel it right off. So I'm gonna do that with all, let me set the camera up here, with all the rest so that you guys can see. end up with this beautiful, clean lines. Sometimes a little bit of the white will come off, and I have a teeny tiny little paintbrush that I'll go and touch it back up. Or some of the black might come off, and I have a little stain brush that has the stain, and I'll go and touch that back up. But that actually turned out really good. So that's the lettering. It's probably gonna take about another 5 minutes to dry, and then we're gonna seal it. We're gonna seal the whole sign. I'm gonna show you what kind of sealer I use. I just use polyurethane semi-gloss, or you can use, I just use regular gloss. You can use semi-gloss, you can use matte, but it's got all the instructions on the back of the can. I usually just spray it, leave it for about, well actually, right now Andrew sprays it because I'm pregnant, and I'm not supposed to be spraying it. So Andrew sprays it, so he'll do that. And because it's going outside, I was saying earlier, I do not have like a porch or anything. It's gonna go right outside, and it's gonna have a little awning, but it won't have a lot of protection, so I'm probably gonna put like 3 or 4 coats on it just to be safe. But if you're doing like an indoor sign, you really only need like 1 coat. So but you definitely need at least 1 coat, and if it's going outside, probably need a couple more to protect it from the sunlight and the rain. So like I said, all the instructions are on the back of the can, and once this is dry and the sealer is dry, we're going to attach the bow and the boxwood. The next step is to attach, and this side is all sealed. I kind of wish I would have put it just a tad lower for when the bow goes on there, but overall I'm really happy with it. I think it looks really good. So, and that is a gloss sealer, but you can use matte or semi-gloss for just a little bit of gloss. So the first thing we need to do is attach the ribbon that's going to hold the sign. So I'm just going to cut off about that much. I would say that's probably like 2 feet or so. Probably don't need that much. All right, I hope you can see this. So you're going to make a loop at the very top. All right, and then kind of angle your ribbon outwards, then fold it so that you can reinforce it really good. Fold it twice, and then I just have a regular staple gun. Just gonna stick that down. Okay, one side. Again. Fold this twice. And I didn't mention this, but you do want to make sure that you have it at the right. I lined up my lettering with my grain, so you want to make sure that your ribbon is lined up to where when it hangs, it's going to hang straight. Your grain is going to hang straight. Okay, so there's the ribbon to hold it. Okay, so we have our little boxwood picks. These are actually 97 cents at Walmart, which is really awesome because when I was looking for boxwood, I actually looked at Hobby Lobby, just the picks. I actually looked at Hobby Lobby and Michael's and Joann's, and I couldn't find any that I really liked. To me, they all looked like really plasticky, which I mean, these are artificial, but they look the most realistic to me. Okay, so you're gonna wanna put both of the bases right in the middle, just like I did. I don't know if you can see it. So one is going down, and you just kind of have to eyeball it to where I have it to where the fullest part starts kind of centered with where the ribbon's gonna be. This is really hard to show this at this angle, so I hope you guys are seeing this. Okay, so I'm going to start by just attaching this down. Make it nice and secure. You could cut off this extra little bit, but I didn't really feel like it was necessary because it's going to be covered up by the other side of boxwood anyway, so I don't really feel like that was necessary. So just make sure that they're spread out at about the same amount. You don't want one side looking a lot further in than the other side or anything like that. And this is part of the reason why I wanted a big old puffy bow, because you have all these staples and stuff right here, and you don't want any of that to show. So my favorite part, we're gonna attach the bow, and then it will be all done. All you gotta do is get in the center, the very base, and then just staple gun that down at the very base of your bow. You're gonna wanna do the top and the bottom so that it's not looking all floppy from the top. So you just push your bow aside. You can always refluff it later. Just don't get your fingers. It'll be very painful with one of these. Okay, staple gun. And all done. And ta-da! Beautiful. Oh, I love it. It's just perfect. Okay, so just a quick recap. The circle 18 inches at Lowe's was $12. The buffalo check ribbon at Hobby Lobby on sale was $3.50, which they do go on sale a lot. And you are going to end up with a lot of extra ribbon that you could use for other projects. And the boxwood picks were 97 cents each at Walmart. So pretty cheap project, and took, I don't know, maybe about an hour even with drying time. So there are a lot of extra techniques in this one. There's the reverse vinyl, there's staining, distressing, the bow making. So if you didn't want to try the writing, I know that Hobby Lobby does have a lot of wooden cutouts like welcome and hello and hi. And I want to say that they will do the bows for you too for like a small fee. I think that they'll make you bows. I know they did that years ago when I very first bought ribbon. They made it, but I don't know if they do that anymore. But that's pretty easy. There's a lot of other tutorials on YouTube and things like that for bow making, and then the rest of it is just stapling it on there and sealing it. So I hope it goes well for you. Send me pictures if you guys try it, and I will be listing this in my shop if you're like, oh man, I don't have time for all that, I don't want to try that. So but I would love to know how it goes if you do try it. So thanks for watching.